a question I get is, what advice can you give entrepreneurs who are grieving while trying to grow their business? And I think for me, what's been helpful is just talking about it. Talking about it helps me remember. Talking about it helps me embody her strength. It helps me help other people. It keeps it from being pent up inside of me. So I think talking about it has been really, really tough, but also really freeing. Welcome to Building Unapologetically, the podcast where we dive into the raw journey of personal growth, business building, and faith-infused strategies. I'm your host, Jordan Guyton, and I'm here to share my unfiltered highs, lows, and the lessons I've learned along the way. Get ready to be inspired, challenged, and empowered to build your dreams unapologetically. All right, it is the evening, and I cannot tell you how many times I have tried to bring myself to have this conversation. So first and foremost, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Building Unapologetically. This is going to be an emotionally driven yet empowering topic of conversation. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my grief journey and growing a business and really holding that duality. I've gotten so many DMs in the past about just how telling my story has been so helpful for you if you have lost a parent or have lost a loved one. And so I really want to just start this episode by sending you the biggest hug and just wrapping my arms around you as you continue to heal, because I really do truly believe that healing is never finished. It is truly a journey. So I want to talk a little bit about the loss of my mother, who passed away in February 2021. And for those of you that don't know, my mom was literally my best friend. We would talk every single day. She raised me as a single mom until I was 9 years old. And so it was her and I for a very long time. I know 9 years is not a long time, but it was a long time. And I really do feel in my heart of hearts, I am one of her most favorite people ever. I say that with pride. And so I want to just take you back a little bit to when this happened and where I was in my journey. Again, I'll take you back to when I started my business in July of 2020, and I had launched my business, gotten my LLC, and I remember calling my mom and telling her that I had named my business Vera Jean Media, Vera Jean being her mother's name. Another one of my besties, my grandma actually passed my senior year of high school. Witnessing my mom's relationship with my grandmother was just so powerful. Just the lineage of women and the strength and the resilience that I've witnessed in my life of my mom experiencing grief and losing siblings at a young age and losing her mother at a young age as well. She was 44, I believe, when my grandmother passed. So just a lot of this journey that I'm going through and growing through is really by watching her example of how she was so strong and how she continued to show up for me. And when my grandmother passed, my little brother was like 3 years old and she was pregnant with my sister. So just witnessing my mom continue to grow through grief, I think was like the first teacher for me. And I never really thought about that until I really sat down and decided to record this episode and started to outline this episode of like, where does some of this strength come from? And it really came from her setting that example. It was 8 months later where I was in the thick of my business. Things were going great. We were about to hit that 6-figure milestone. I had just gotten engaged in November, and in February, I'd gotten the call from my sister, actually, who had found my mom, and she had called 911, and I remember just being frozen. I was at home in Brooklyn with my fiance at the time. We were 8 weeks away from getting married, and I don't even know. I don't even know what emotion. It literally still is all a blur to me. My mom had an aneurysm in 2015 that she lived through, had brain surgery. I was with her by her side like the whole time, in addition to still working. And my mom lived in Massachusetts at the time. And I remember being with her the entire week. And then on Friday, I would get on a bus to New York, work for the weekend, get on a bus on Monday, make sure I was back on Monday to help get the kids ready for school and for the week, in addition to taking care of my mom. And I did that for a while. It was a few months. I was back and forth from New York to Massachusetts. So again, just by her side. And when I got that call, I don't know, there was just, I don't know, I just felt it. And I know that one, that day was a blur to me, but I just knew that my life was going to change. And I remember hopping in an Uber because when I got the call, I knew I had to get back to Massachusetts and I was going to get a rental car. And then they were out of rental cars. And then I was freaking out and how am I going to get home? And then I ended up getting in an Uber. Mind you, my mom was in Massachusetts. So I was in an Uber for how long was the ride? I think it was 3.5 hours. And I remember while I was in the Uber and my phone rang, I had texted my sister and I was like, how's mom? How's mom? And she didn't text me back. And that's when I knew. And so my stepdad had called me. He told me that she had passed. And that's when my life changed. I lost my best friend. And I'm so grateful that I had my other best friend with me in the car and had that support through the entire process to be there for my brother and for my sister and for my family. And again, it was such a blur. It is such a blur. And I think it's just that shock, right? I don't know if that ever comes back or if you ever remember all of that, but it went by so fast. And I remember all the calls and all the texts and all the, the Uber Eats people were sending us and just trying to take care of us. And then I also was still holding the duality of getting married and planning a wedding. And I went back and forth about calling it off. We had a Zoom wedding. It was already scheduled. And I asked myself, what would my mom want me to do? And she loved my husband. And so I did get married. And it was a great day, but it was also so hard. It was so hard because you're holding the highest of highs, right? And the lowest of lows. And I ended up taking some time off. It was so crazy around that time, again, how everything happened. It was just me and my assistant at the time, Francesca, if you're listening, shout out to you. Thank you for holding me down. And I remember having to let my clients know because I was doing one-on-one at that time. And I just needed a break. I just needed to step away. And I remember getting married, going on my honeymoon it's a mini moon. I don't think we've really done our honeymoon. I still really want to go to Greece for our quote unquote honeymoon. And I just unplugged. I, of course, let social media know that my mom had passed away. And I think one of the biggest signs that I was doing something right was just the support that came from my community and my clients. I have a feeling I know that God gave me this business in the right time. He gave me this business in the time where I needed to start building and start to pour into something that would fuel me and something that, yes, I'd have to take a step away from, but couldn't wait to get back to because it really just fueled my soul. And I knew how much my mom wanted me to do this. And I remember telling her when I think I said this already, but when I did LLC and named it after my grandma, she cried. She was so happy. She was so excited. I don't even think she knew exactly what I was doing at the very beginning, but she was so proud of the legacy and the lineage that I decided to step out and build in honor of her mom and in honor of my grandma. I really think that resilience and that strength has really shaped our business's mission and values. I don't even know if this is making sense or if this is supposed to make sense, but I think just telling this story is helpful for me. I mean, I hope it's helpful for you. And so I remember, like I said, getting back to work and just the outpour and the love and the flower. Y'all, it's so crazy. And I say this now because I've experienced it. I'll say it again, the best businesses are built with communities that support you in your presence, right? When you're there and you're showing up, but also support you in your absence. And I remember coming back to social. It wasn't long after I hit my 10K in following. It started growing like crazy. We started getting people in for the program. It was no coincidence. is what I'm trying to say. But I do want to speak to the fact that there were emotional hurdles that I faced after losing my mom. There were days where I did not want to work. I did not want to show up. I did not want to keep building this thing. And one was my support that kept me going. I remember just showing up and being surrounded and fulfilled by my business and my community. I remember going live and I forgot what I was talking about, but I remember saying, and it wasn't long after my mom passed away. And to be honest, when I said it, I halfway believed it and it broke me. It broke me to tears. And I said, I'm still going because even when it doesn't feel like or seem like things are working out for my good, I believe that they are. And it was hard for me to believe that and say that at the same time because I just wanted my mom. I still want my mom. But I also believe in the hand that God has over my life, his promises, and what's to come. And now I have 2 amazing guardian angels in heaven. I didn't think I was going to be so emotional with this. This is a crybaby episode. So Tiana, my podcast editor, thank you. I want to, of course, be tactical, right? Because I have gotten a couple questions about just navigating this and how I've been able to keep going. And, one of the questions I get often is, how do I maintain focus and motivation when dealing with grief as a business owner? And I think one of the things that's really important to me is just built in time for myself, whether that looks like my Fridays where I am blocking off time for therapy, or I am blocking off time to read my mom's old journals, or I am blocking off time to do FaceTime with my brother and my sister. How am I ensuring that I am taking a step forward in my healing process, right? Journaling, that's another great one. And then on the second side of that is really listening to myself when I don't feel like showing up, or when I feel like it's a heavier, sadder, tougher day, to not force myself to show up. And so to support myself in that looks like planning content ahead of time. That looks like leaning on my team a little bit more. That looks like not showing up and it just being nothing, right? And being okay with that, sitting in the fact that things didn't get done, or that I have to send the email and say, hey, can we push this call to tomorrow? And just being real and honest with myself. I think, another thing that has just helped me is my faith, just being rooted and staying connected to God and asking my mom for signs and believing that she's with me and believing that she hears me when I talk to her. It's things like that that allow me to maintain my focus and my motivation. Resources or tools, like I said, always therapy is my number one go-to. I also think if you have or can surround yourself, I wouldn't say surround yourself, but I think for me, it's nice to have a couple of people that I know that I can talk to that have experienced the loss of a mother. There's nothing like this. I've never experienced anything like this. And I've lost my grandmother, and I've lost aunts and uncles. I lost my grandfather. I've never, ever experienced something like this. And I think having other women that I know that have experienced this and I can talk to that may be further along in their journey has been pivotal, has been beautiful. Last but not least, a question I get is, what advice can you give entrepreneurs who are grieving while trying to grow their business? And I think for me, what's been helpful is just talking about it. It's hard. Trust me. I mean, I just literally cried my eyes out on a podcast. Talking about it helps me remember. Talking about it helps me embody her strength. Talking about it helps me help other people. Talking about it keeps it from being pent up inside of me. So I think talking about it has been really, really tough, but also really freeing. I really want to emphasize the importance of just reaching out to others for support, and then also speaking and talking about your story and your situation or where you're at. Or, I have days where I just look at my husband and I just cry when he's like, what's wrong? And I'm just like, I'm sad. There's nothing more. There's nothing less. I'm just sad, because it comes in waves. So yeah, I did not think this was going to be as I did. That's probably why I was like, I don't want to do this, because I know I'm going to freaking cry my eyes out. But again, I always hope that this is helpful. Grief is not easy. it is something that I am navigating every single day. And it's been, February 2021, 2020, 2 years and some change. So still very fresh. And I'm really doing the best that I can. That's really all you can do. So I want to thank you for being here and holding space for me to be vulnerable and transparent and sharing my grief journey. Because like I said, it is a journey. It is not a destination. Like, you got to keep working at this thing. And, the only thing I can do right now, again, is just wrap my arms around anyone that is feeling sad or feeling the weight of grief. Just know that I am sending you the biggest hug. One of the things, my mom was in a group at church, and one of the things people would always tell me from group is that my mom gives the best hugs, and she truly did. So I want you to know that if you're going through any sort of grief or sadness, I am giving you one of the biggest hugs my mom could ever give. I wish you an amazing, amazing night, day, week, weekend, month, year ahead. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in to Building Unapologetically. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star rating, and share this episode in your Instagram stories ASAP. Don't forget to tag me at Jordan Guyton. Your feedback and support truly means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners who are on their journey to building unapologetically.